Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris Quinn with my co-host,
Dom DiTolla.
And this episode, we're going to be talking about Lute Olson.
Tucson legend,
Yes,
Lute Olson.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tucson. If you are anywhere in Arizona, you have to know pretty much everything about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's put Tucson on the map, essentially, by coaching basketball here for 2 decades and being a success.
Well, he made college basketball significant, and growing up here, we've actually had this conversation, like, college football wasn't like the big draw. It was always college basketball.
Yeah. I mean, their football program is only Pac-12 now team to not make a Rose Bowl, but man, Arizona's a basketball school, much like Duke and Kansas and North Carolina, where their football teams are kind of meh, but it's about basketball here.
It makes me think of that movie Speed.
Yeah.
When he sees that she goes to like U of A and he's like, good football team. And it's like, wait, what?
Wait, no, this is 1994. They're straight killing it.
If this was me, I'd be like, this dude's a cop.
Yeah.
You know, like,
whoa, U of A.
Yeah.
Desert Swarm.
Great football team they got there. It's like, no, hold up. Are you a narc?
They had that one good year where they won the Fiesta Bowl.
And that's what he was referencing.
Yeah.
It's like that one good year. But for Arizona basketball, they had 25 good years.
Yeah,
so.
They have every year's a good year pretty
Yeah.
much here. So very entertaining team. But doing the Lute Olson episode now, not only because he is a Tucson legend, but he just recently passed on the 27th of August this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, it's a sad
2020 again.
Yeah. Definitely had a great life. It's one of those where you look back and you're like, man, he built multiple programs too, really.
Yeah, I mean, and he was 85. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tragic that he died, but I mean, like, he lived a good, full, outstanding life.
Yeah.
And definitely brought some pride to a city where, you know, Tucson is not a lot to be proud about, no offense. But
Dom's going to lay in on Tucson in this episode.
Look,
Don't worry.
All I'm going to say is, Lute Olson aside, Tucson is like that C student of a city, but like that C student who doesn't like try really hard like a Tulsa. Tucson's that C student that just lays back and relaxes because everywhere around him, like, somebody's setting something on fire in the corner. That's Benson. Somebody's huffing glue. That's Yuma. Like, Tucson doesn't have to try.
Somebody's fucking a horse. That's Marana. Damn it. But
sorry for all the local jokes if you're not from here and don't understand.
I'm sure they'll get it though, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But Lute Olson, let's go back to his
Born September 22nd, 1934 in Mayville, North Dakota.
Yep.
He in 1939, so when he was a teenager, his dad died. He was a World War I veteran, but his older brother Amos also died in a tractor accident shortly thereafter. So I mean,
his dad died of a stroke, which we see is genetic. Because
exactly.
He died of a stroke when he was 85. I think his dad was like 45 or something.
Yeah, his dad wasn't very old.
Yeah, he was way younger. But you see that it's hereditary, and it was definitely an imprint on his life.
Yeah, and definitely
Dad and brother died, in the span of a couple of years when you're a teenager. It's pretty wild.
And then you pour yourself into farming and you pour yourself into sports to kind of,
Yeah.
And what else do you have in North Dakota besides that?
That's it. That's the livelihood. They don't even have a Walmart.
I'm sure they do now. But went to Grand Forks Central, great basketball player, obviously, since he's a great coach. Won the 1952 state championship, 16 points in the championship game. He was a center, which I found kind of hilarious now as how big these guys are, but he was like 6'3", which is tall.
Yes.
I mean, like tall for a regular person.
Yes.
For basketball, I can't even imagine.
But back then, I feel like the average height was a lot shorter too. It was
probably like 5'6". 5'7".
So 6'3", I bet he was towering over these 5'7" guards.
White chocolate wilt the stilt Lute Olson.
Exactly. Exactly.
But he gets a scholarship. He goes to Augsburg College. Meets his wife actually in high school, the late Bobby Olson.
Yep.
Definitely remarried a couple times after she had died, but great woman. She's actually shares the name of U of A's court. It's Lute and Bobby Olson Court there over at the McHale Center.
Yeah. That's definitely. She was definitely a wonderful woman, and the partnership that they had, you see, was one of the best.
Yeah, definitely together now forever, basically.
Yeah.
But he goes to Augsburg College, plays football, basketball, and even baseball for a year. So, I mean, I would love to see old film of him playing basketball.
Yeah.
Right? Like in those Hoosier shorts, straight up boxing guys out in the paint.
Grabbing those boards, man. He was the center.
Boards. Yeah. Windex man up there.
Cleaning it.
But so after he graduates college, he decides he wants to be a coach and ends up making his way out to the West Coast, out to California.
Well, this is what I find interesting is he kind of has the same path as these guys who want to coach basketball and they go and become high school teachers.
Yeah, and he was a high school teacher,
and I find it interesting because there really isn't an avenue, even for ex-players a lot of the time, to go straight into a college as an assistant or as a head coach. It's so bottlenecked.
It's very rare. Most of the time you'll have the former players go on now, kind of the path is your grad assistants.
Yes.
Like you'll become that didn't exist at the time in basketball. So he made his way how everyone did back in the day.
Which is through high school, and then you almost had to coach high school for a decade.
Yeah, and he coached 13 years in high school.
And prove that you could do it, which he did. And this is what so many coaches did, and I feel like kind of lost out on time in not pros, obviously, but college in America is kind of like pros. But you know what I mean? He almost kind of stunted the beginning of his career.
He did. He was probably in high school for way too long.
Well, he talked about
his talent.
He was in the, I think it was like the 8-9 year. He was like trying to bust kids for like smoking and shit like that. And he was just like, I'm sick done with this.
I just want to coach.
Yeah, I don't care if you're smoking. Like, are you on the basketball team? No.
Yeah.
Then I don't care if you're smoking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't care.
that was his attitude. And he was like, I really need to get away from high school because it's not good for them. It's not good for me. And that's when he gets his first job at Long Beach. Long Beach Community.
Long Beach City College. So first he goes to Long Beach City College in 67. And to his credit, by 1971, they won the junior college championship.
Yes.
And people start noticing. People in Long Beach notice.
I was
going to
say,
goes to Long Beach State.
Right down the street.
And goes right down the street. He only coached at Long Beach State, though, for 1 year in 73, 74. And the reason for this, and he was successful. I mean, he had his team ranked in the top 5. They were 24-2. The whole problem was, and the reason he left there, is he took over for another very famous yet very controversial NCAA basketball coach, who's actually one of my all-time favorites as a fan of WAC basketball and non-Pac-10 schools, is Jerry Tarkanian, Tark the Shark. And kind of wherever Tark the Shark goes, problems as far as players either acting out or improper benefits start coming with them.
Well, this is what they said was, I think 5 players from that Long Beach team got drafted in the NBA that next year.
Yeah, they did. I mean, he knows how to. And when we talk about U of A, and we're going to see a lot of talent.
He knows how to produce really smart basketball players. But it's this thing where he didn't build this team, but it was kind of obvious that this team was built in a shady way.
It was built in a shady way, and he coached them up to make them successful. But, when you take over a program where there are rumblings of probation, which Long Beach State eventually was put on probation, Lute's like, I'm not putting up with that crap. I didn't do any of the stuff, and I have to deal with the fallout.
Yeah.
But luckily for him there in 1974, Iowa comes calling. And the University of Iowa, known more for football and wrestling, don't really have kind of a basketball team that they can really be proud of as far as the Big Ten is concerned, because that's a big basketball conference.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting quote from Lute. He said, people don't go from Long Beach to Iowa. They go from Iowa to Long Beach.
They go opposite.
Yeah. He was the first one that was like, I'm going to go there and make this a program. He wanted, because I feel like he was so jaded with Long Beach, he wanted it to be all his own. He didn't want to take over after somebody was really doing a bunch of stuff that was going to hurt. Which is why I hate the way that punishment comes down in college.
Oh, dude, same here. Especially towards the players who aren't making any money. They're punished. The coaches are punished.
It was players that aren't even there at the time.
Yeah,
it's crazy, but it's like literally they can't do anything with it.
Your hands are tied. F the NCAA. I'm just gonna say you're a bunch of corrupt jagoffs, and I hope something comes and breaks you.
Yes, no, it's one of the worst for punishment and for for the benefit of these student athletes, it's one of the worst.
Oh, it totally is. But at Iowa there,
Yeah.
coached there 1974 to 1983. And like you had said, he wanted to start fresh. He wanted
Yep.
to do it his way. And he made them a very solid basketball program.
A great program out of nothing.
Out of nothing.
You think of a Midwest school in this time in the 70s, 80s, or whatever, there couldn't be that many players wanting to go there, you know?
Well, obviously, because you're in a conference with the likes of Michigan, Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State. Like, you got to really sell people on Iowa City.
Yeah.
Like, and to his credit, and we'll talk about this the next place he goes, you can see how good of a coach he is and what a builder he is. Because he had this team, his record there was 167 and 91.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, which is absolutely incredible. And not only...
And I think the first season he had 4 wins.
Yeah.
So the first season, if you look at how bad he did in the first season, if you take that out, like he really had a great winning percentage at a team in a really hard conference. Like you think about taking over like a really shitty, like a Colorado State in the Pac-12 right now, kind of.
Colorado,
yeah, and it's kind of hard to think that you would be able to bring talent and develop talent into what he did, which was a Final Four basketball team.
Yeah, 1980 they actually made. I mean, they made the tournament almost every year he was there.
Yeah.
I mean, making Sweet 16s, but 1980 was like his crowning achievement because he took Iowa all the way to the Final Four, and unfortunately for them, their point guard got hurt during the game, and he has gone on and said, and the team believes that if he is healthy, they win.
Well,
they win the whole shebang-a-bang.
He was injured, I think, for like the first half of the season.
Yeah,
and then
he
came
hurt
back.
his knee again.
Well, he came back, and they were crushing teams.
Yeah,
It's you watch, especially in college, where teams kind of go in like 2-year cycles.
Yeah.
You see that it was like that year, that team healthy would have crushed.
Yeah, and they ended up losing to, I believe, Louisville in the semifinal. Louisville went on to win the whole thing in 1980, but it's a darn shame and that they couldn't pull it off because he's still, throughout his life, even after he stopped coaching, he had, good ties to Iowa. There was no necessarily bad blood. They were appreciative. And you had talked about they built the new arena because of him.
Well, luckily for us here in Tucson, I feel like if he had gone on and won the national championship there, he probably could have stayed.
He probably would have stayed.
For a longer period of time, and the Tucson job wouldn't have been open, or it just would have changed, history. So them losing that, and then 3 years later, like you said, they built a pretty much new arena, which is the way that it went down, even though in Iowa they weren't really bitter about it, was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So they built this arena. They were getting it prepped for the whole year. I think they played like half of their home games in it. And then that summer he quit and went to U of A.
Which, thank God he did, because at that point, U of A was like the dregs of the Pac-10, then Pac-10. I mean, they were the worst program. But when he came, it kind of came at a perfect time for Arizona because UCLA was always king in that conference for basketball. But that's when they kind of started sliding and falling off a bit, where they weren't the dominant teams with the dominant big men like Kareem and Walton and, their 80-whatever game winning streak. My dad was actually at that game where it ended.
Wow.
When they lost to Notre Dame.
Wow.
He said it was like the most ridiculous sports experience ever. And then like for the next week, the entire campus was hammered, still celebrating. Because like UCLA was winning like the entire game, and this is before the free 3-point line. So it was just like a lot of fouls and turnovers in like the last minute or so, and they ended up pulling it out. But yeah.
That's crazy. Well, speaking of your dad, you were talking about because he comes to U of A.
Yeah, he did his master's and PhD here. That's where he met my mom. My mom's a Tucson local. That's kind of why I'm here still.
Yeah. And well, like you were saying, they watched Sean Elliott play high school.
Yeah. So what Lute, his first season, doesn't make the tournament at U of A. But then he starts kind of getting players. And like the key, like Steve Kerr finally comes. They were the only school to offer him a scholarship. And they start kind of getting players. And the one recruit that they had to get was Sean Elliott.
And the only reason why they got him was he was a homegrown talent. He grew up here in Tucson.
My dad told me they saw him in like high school over at Cholla.
Yeah.
Like, and Sean Elliott, if Lute Olson's not there, he probably goes to UCLA or SC.
Yeah.
Or he goes to another large school out west that's not Tucson. Like the joke was before Lute Olson was here, Tucson was just a place you got gas before you went to LA.
Yeah.
And once he gets Elliott, and then you get Tom Tolbert in there, and then you get Kenny Lofton playing as the sixth man backup point guard.
That was interesting. I went to elementary school with his son for a couple of years.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Nice.
he was weird. You know what I mean? Where like kids are just weird.
Yeah.
He was a weird kid. That's all I can say.
Kenny Lofton was one of the best base stealers and great center fielders for like a decade and a half for the Indians. I mean, I don't know if he probably could have been a bench guy playing pro ball for basketball, but man, what a star on the baseball field.
Well, it's like we bring up these guys who are multi-sport athletes who are just that great of an athlete that they can go out and be the sixth man of this great U of A team, but also you can see he was just like that much better of a baseball player.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Longtime Cleveland Indian.
Yep.
And anyway, Lute starts in 83. By 87, 88, they're starting to make some tournament runs. They're going to the Sweet 16. They're advancing, to the field of 64, whatever. They finally have that one team together because Arizona's won nothing as far as basketball is concerned at this point.
Yeah.
And there's pictures of me, actually, because I was born summer of 87. By March of 88, I have a U of A, because what they do, I have a U of A Final Four shirt. They make it all the way to the 1988 Final Four.
Yeah.
And that had never been done before.
No, that was the first time a U of A, a team from Tucson, to do anything like that, even in all sports.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like it's been a Division I school for pretty much all its sports, but they have never been a winning school before Lute came.
Yeah, not a winning school for basketball. Their baseball team's always been awesome.
Yep.
Referencing Kenny Lofton, they've won national championships before.
I was going to say I don't really know anything about U of A baseball.
Oh, dude, they're always a powerhouse.
Interesting. I guess I don't really know anything about college baseball, to go off on a tangent, but that's just my, you know what I mean? How I know about other sports in college, basketball, and even soccer in amateur, but I just really don't know.
Yeah, they beat Hawaii, actually, for the national championship in 1980.
Okay.
Hawaii has a whole little thing at their baseball stadium, like a whole shrine to that 1980 team that came up short against the Cats. But yeah, the basketball is the big-time sport.
Yeah.
And for him to do that and for him to build a winning program, because now they're at the top of the Pac-10. Nobody can touch them at that time. And, they're ready for more Final Four runs because they lost in the semifinal again. I believe they lost to Oklahoma that year. If not Oklahoma, it was Kansas, because that was the final game. The Wayman Tisdale and then Danny Manning for the Jayhawks.
In 88 or 80?
88.
Yeah, 88.
88.
Yeah.
And but what ends up kind of happening in the aftermath of that is the following year they win all these games again, and then they lose in the Elite Eight to Tart the Shark and the Runnin' Rebs.
Yep.
And that was Sean Elliott's last game. So Sean Elliott's out, but Lute just keeps filling the talent pool with amazing players. The problem is, probably for the next 5 or 6 years, and this is where I make the analogy, Lute Olson is a lot like Bill Cowher as a coach, where very successful, but there are a lot of times where he has these loaded teams that they just come up short for whatever reason.
Yes.
And you saw that, they lost in 92, I believe, to Steve Nash in Santa Clara when they were a 2 seed as a 2-15 game. I think that might have been the first one to happen or the second time that happened. They lost to East Tennessee State, I think, the following year in a 3-14 game.
They have a lot of ridiculous losses on teams that were, if you look back, that are stacked.
Yeah, they're loaded. I mean, this is like the Sean Rooks, Reggie Geary, those types of teams.
Yep.
Brian Williams, the late Brian Williams was on there. Matt Othick. I mean, they had a really loaded lineup. And just Chris Mills, who played for the Cavs for a long time. He was really a good player.
Michael Dickerson. I mean, he was a
little bit
later, but I just mean these are players that came out of this U of A program that you see play on professional basketball teams.
Yeah.
That you don't really see out of other programs. You see players like come through, but not the consistency of players.
Not the consistency and success at the NBA level. And I want to get to this later, but I'll just say this. Places like Duke, they're good, but they have their system.
Yeah.
You rarely see Duke players dominating in the NBA or even just good as role players in the NBA like you do compared to U of A. And I always think Lute gets the short end of the stick compared to somebody like Krzyzewski.
Yeah, well, especially with Duke, they almost don't have role players in the NBA because they're not producing those type of players.
No, they aren't.
Yeah.
And anyway, they finally break through again, though, in 93, 94.
Yep.
Because now you have Joe Blair, you have Damon Stoudemire, who's most famous for being an all-star and also trying to take weed through an airport security in aluminum foil.
My personal favorite U of A player, Damon Stoudemire.
Yeah. Great player. Mighty Mouse, man.
Mighty Mouse, yeah.
Dude.
I used to watch him all the time in that era.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, this is my era of watching this. Yeah.
Khalid Reeves, I mean, even though he never made it in the pros, that was a dominant swing man right there.
Yeah.
And they parlayed that success. They made it all the way to the Final Four again. But much like, his other trips, like with Iowa and then U of A before, they lost to eventual national champion Arkansas. Arkansas went out and just, with the Nolan Richardson, 40 minutes of hell, just dominated them on the defensive front, and you couldn't get out of their own way.
I remember that one because of, and this is, well, I'm sure we'll get into it, but the political aspect of teams. I remember Clinton being in Arkansas and that whole, I distinctly remember that because my parents have been Democrats their whole life, but they were like, fuck Clinton. And I remember laughing so hard when I was like 12 at that because they were like, no, like politics aside, like this is U of A basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, seriously.
And it's like a religion here. And like, not to knock Tucson, but like, it's what a lot of people have pride in here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you can't hang your hat on a lot. There's no pro sports.
None.
This is like your team, and they're good.
Well, growing up here, we used to have spring ball for baseball. We used to have the Tucson Toros was our local team, but they used to have spring ball and then college basketball. Literally that was
March was the most exciting month of the year here when I come on vacation here, honestly, because that's when everything was going on. Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
You could get U of A football tickets for like $5, and they would never sell out, and you would get like great seats because nobody gave a shit.
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
But McHale, man, that was a hot ticket.
Yeah.
It's still a hot ticket.
It is, yeah.
I mean... But one thing you got into the political thing with Clinton reminded me how in the early 90s, Olson, this was at a time when Arizona was the only state that didn't do MLK Day.
This is exactly where I was going to go.
By the way, there is a great In Living Color sketch with one of the Wayans brothers, obviously, and David Allen Greer, where they're Arizona Cowboys, and it's an MLK one. It's so funny.
No, it's perfect because growing up here, when this happened, there was like three... Because I mean, I was 7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there was like 3 opinions going around that kids were sharing that obviously their parents were sharing them, which was obviously we should be celebrating this. It's something that's celebrated all over. Or the other one was they're taking away our rodeo vacation.
I remember my parents were like, who cares? It's rodeo.
Well, this is the thing about people who live in Arizona is they would go out and take vacations places, and the places would be dead. Like we went to Disneyland when I was a kid for rodeo vacation, and it was dead because nobody else celebrates rodeo. And people think like we're celebrating the rodeo around here. It's like, no. We just want those vacation days where other people don't have off.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad was like, oh, that kind of sucks, but I'm still for it. And then there was the other really racist take on it.
Well, the Arizona take on it.
Yes, exactly. Which as a kid you were like, whoa, did your parents say that? And it was like, yes, that's where they're getting all of this.
I didn't live here at the time, so I have no idea what the climate was like, but I'm sure there probably were a lot of people who were of the non-rodeo persuasion regarding that day. But what Lute did, which I thought was great, he had all his players wear on their warm-up jackets an MLK patch during this time, and people didn't take kindly to it, but he was like, I don't care.
Well, at the time, he was the highest paid state employee, which is common for college basketball coaches.
College or
football,
too.
Yes. But it's he had this platform to say, hey, this isn't right. And he was absolutely correct with it. And
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it reverberates even today with the current NBA stuff that's going on, whether you're for that or not. I mean, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying the ability to show
unity. That's what it was, dude.
Yes.
That's kind of why they did it, to show unity and be like, this is what we need to do.
Yes.
But
it's one of the stories that I didn't know. I remember it happening when I was 7.
Yeah.
I didn't know he necessarily did that, and it's why I love doing the research for this stuff. Is you find out,
and it was a simple protest. It wasn't self-aggrandizing,
Yes.
and it was done within the team. It wasn't like other people on other sides glomming onto it. It was just like, this is what we're gonna do.
Yep.
So yeah.
No, it was great. It was great.
But so after their Final Four run, they kind of have a little bit of a talent drain as far as experience, because the next year they lose a 5-12 to Miami of Ohio. But then 95-96, the young talent starts to arrive again.
Yep.
And they get eventually to the Sweet 16 and lose to Kansas, but you can kind of tell that the pieces are in place because you've got your Michael Dickerson already there.
Yeah,
you got Miles Simon there. You have, I think Bramlett is already there, but riding the pine. And then
But they're young.
Jason Terry is on the bench too.
We're talking about these guys and they're freshmen and sophomores at this time.
Exactly.
So Jason Terry is there, and then 97 I think is when you get Mike Bibby.
96, 97 you get Bibby, and that turns it completely around. They get Bennett Davidson from the junior college ranks. Edgarson's coming off the bench as a freshman.
Yep.
I mean, you're getting these role players in there, and they're young and they're streaky and they're talented, but they're, you kind of have your ups and downs with injuries. I think Simon missed some time for academic suspension that year.
I distinctly remember that. And then they were very streaky. They were a young team, so they didn't have a great regular season.
And what people forget is, and I'll say this, since 1997, no Pac-10 or 12 college basketball team has won a national championship.
Yep.
But in 96, 97, the Pac-10 was loaded because Arizona was really good. UCLA was really good. Cal was really good. They had Tony Gonzalez playing on their team. Stanford was really good. I mean, it was a bomb-ass time to play of that era in the Pac-10 for basketball.
Well, Arizona went like 11-5 in conference
Yeah,
play.
they finished with under 20 regular season wins. They were 19-9 and finished 5th in the Pac-10.
Yeah.
So is remarkable.
Yeah, because they're really a great team, but you see how great the Pac-10 was at that time.
But you could kind of tell throughout that season, it's like, okay, maybe not this year is the year, but man, we are loaded. So they end up going to the tournament in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
They're a 4 seed. And what ends up happening is their first round game against South Alabama, they're down in the second half. And you're thinking, oh, another Lute Olson tournament favored type thing, but they come back and win.
Yes.
They luck out in the next round because Maryland is a 5-12 upset to College of Charleston. They're down again, and then they come back. And they're in the Sweet 16, but guess who they play? Kansas, with one regular season loss. And I remember the one regular season loss they had living in Colorado. I got that game for whatever reason on the radio.
Okay.
And they're playing Missouri, and Missouri took them to overtime, I believe, and beat them. And I remember in like my 10-year-old mind, I was thinking like, U of A's got a chance. Missouri beat them. Somebody can do it.
Yeah. But Kansas was the team that everybody thought was going to go on to win.
Everyone was riding their dick that year.
Yes.
And for good reason. Not to be negative. They were loaded. They had LaFrance, Paul Pierce, Jock Vaughn. I mean, Scott Pollard, who was a good stopper for the Kings back in the day. I mean,
a great center. It's one of these teams like we were talking about with these older U of A teams that just ran into a team that had a better day.
And U of A came out hot that night.
Exactly.
They came out hot. And when you could tell, there was a lot of times during his career because they played kind of a more open brand of basketball under Lute. I mean, decent defense, but I mean, and good enough to stop teams, but they used their speed and ran them up and down for the first portion of that game.
I think you can see the way Steve Kerr coaches with what Lute Olson wanted to do.
Yeah.
3-pointers, speed, youth, kind of that motion.
And they would run a lot of 3-guard sets
Yes.
where they would take, I think, Davidson out, and they would have Terry, Bibby, Simon, and Dickerson.
Yes.
And you would have those guys all kind of between, 6 foot and 6'6", just spreading the floor and
I was
beating
going to say,
teams.
Dickerson pretty much would play small forward on any other team, but the way that they were spreading him that time, I mean, he was going in as a great swing man. That was what because a lot of people talk shit that he only really produced great point guards.
Yeah.
Through U of A. But
he produced great players at every position.
Yes.
I mean, no, just the list goes on and on from the guys that we've mentioned and we're going to mention later.
I was going to say there's a bunch coming later, but that's the only down talk that I've heard from him was like he only produces great point guards.
Oh,
and
get
then
the fuck
and
out
then
of
I
here
started
with that
reading. I
argument.
know.
Yeah.
And then I started reading, and I was like, "Who the hell would write this?"
Andre Iguodala. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That guy has so many championships, but it's crazy because I feel like this was because I'm kind of going to overlap this, but this was such a great statistic that I have to get into it was this is why people said this was the starting guards at U of A from 84, so Steve Kerr, to I think 2003, all of them went on to play starting
in the NBA.
In the NBA, and that's why people were so I guess like dismissive of these other role players that were coming up, these Luke Waltons, these Michael Dickersons.
Sean Elliott had a fantastic career for San Antonio. The Memorial Day Miracle, remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, that guy went to U of A.
Exactly. But that's why I love Lute Olson and the players that he produces is they're so smart.
Yeah, no, Ben Davis, great big man.
Ben Davis, yeah, Jesus.
I mean, but no.
But yeah, we'll get back
into the Kansas game. So
yes.
Kansas ends up kind of, making a comeback as of late, but U of A, for whatever reason, successfully holds them off. And luckily for them, much like that Maryland game, the 2 seed in their bracket is gone. Duke lost to Providence in the second round, I believe, and that's who U of A has to play in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Which for that year's tournament, if you don't know, all the other 3 quadrants of the bracket, the number 1 seed won. They blew through all of their competition. Kentucky, Minnesota, and North Carolina all went in and dominated.
Yeah.
And
people thought this was going to be a 4 number 1 seed.
It was, and it could have been.
And it could have been if the Wildcats didn't do what they did.
And to their credit, U of A, much like in the Kansas game, they came out really strong.
Yeah.
But then Providence comes back. You got Austin Crozier, who played for the Pacers for a while. Sham God, what a great name as their point guard.
Oh, I love it.
They end up forcing the game into overtime, and U of A has to rally and finally come back, and they do to win that game. So they're in the Final Four. It's 3 number 1 seeds.
And U of A.
2 of which are blue bloods in college basketball in North Carolina and Kentucky and Minnesota, which is having a weird off year. I think they even got on probation from the fallout of it.
Yes.
But U of A goes to the Final Four in against North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you watched. I watched this game recently. They had it on Pac-12 Network.
Okay.
North Carolina came out of the gate smoking. Like they were kicking the crap out of them.
That's what I remember from watching it when I was 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But
12.
Anyway, they come out, but U of A finally starts draining threes. They finally start.
Miles Simon starts kicking it in. Jason Terry,
Mike
and then
Bibby, dumping it inside too. But they really start the outside. Jason Terry also played really well.
Yeah.
And North Carolina just goes cold, and they are loaded too. I mean, they have Vince Carter.
I was going to say that
they
was
had
Vince
Antoine
Carter.
Jameson. I mean, they made the Final Four the following year.
Yeah.
I mean, this was Dean Smith's actual last game as head coach. They ended Dean Smith's career.
Yeah.
This young, ridiculous upstart team ends his career, and they end up going to the final and playing defending national champion Kentucky, where nobody thought they had a chance.
No, everybody thought because they were kind of squeaking by against these teams.
Yeah.
Like they went to overtime and.
But you know what? I think that helps your psyche in sports when you play a lot of close games like that because it teaches you you're never out of it.
Yeah.
Unlike a Kentucky who that year was just so loaded. I mean, they had almost everybody coming back.
It
that
teaches
year.
you resilience, and it really brings the group together.
This is before Rick Pitino started paying women for abortions, that type of thing. He's rolling. He's ready to go and fail with the Boston Celtics.
The stories of coaches doing bad shit makes you look at people like Lute Olson and creating these programs out of genuine, like, hey, come here and play basketball. Not like, hey, I don't even want to get into the ridiculous shit that he did at Louisville.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
horrible setting up hooker party, those types
hooker
of things.
parties. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they go on so they're playing Kentucky and it goes to overtime.
Yeah, they play them tight all the way. U of A honestly could have won in regulation.
Yep.
I think Anthony Epps hit a big three for Kentucky to kind of tie the game.
I was gonna say I saw the end of this. I didn't watch the North Carolina one, but
then they end up going to overtime, and at that point, a lot of people were thinking like, "Oh, Kentucky." Experience, all this other stuff, they're going to pull through. But
it was the exact opposite.
U of A ended up winning, and they won on all free throws.
Yeah.
They got Kentucky to get foul happy, and they ended up sinking. And they, to their credit, they made those free throws at the most crucial times.
This is what, again, Lute Olson type players, extremely great guards, great shooters, and great under pressure.
Fundamentals,
man.
I mean, and that's probably why they carved out longer careers in the NBA than they would have had they gone to another program.
Yes, exactly.
And he's finally a champion. And I always think it's weird though. I mean, basketball, granted, the tournament is so hard to win just because you got to win 6 in a row just to do it.
Yep.
But if you look back at his U of A teams, that one probably only cracks the top 10 as far as regular season, honestly.
Not a great team.
They're a talented team, but it's not there yet, which makes the next year so much more disappointing because nobody left. Nobody graduated.
Well, before we get into the next year, I want to get into the celebration. So I got a little tangent story,
dude. Yeah, because I wasn't here when it happened.
So my wife, her family was Catholic, and somebody went to their church, needed a car. And my wife's mom bought a new car, so she gave this family their old car.
Yeah.
These people used to have like a hot dog cart. She couldn't remember exactly what it was, but it was like a food cart of some kind. And they were down there selling food for the game and shit.
Yeah.
And then they won.
Oh, dude, riots probably broke out everywhere.
Broke out, and they flipped the car and torched it.
No!
And the next morning, they saw in the paper, my wife's mom was like, I think that's our old car.
Oh, no.
And then they contacted the family. Obviously, the family was like super poor.
Oh, no,
and like,
dude.
Whenever you think, every time I think of people getting their cars flipped and destroyed and like property down there, I always think they're fans. It's never the fans. It's always workers.
Just people looking for an excuse to riot. That's what it is.
No, I mean the people whose cars get messed up.
Oh, it is. It totally is.
It's always people that are working down there who are just like, God damn it.
Fuck this team.
Yes. The church went out and got them another car, but it's one of, because you could see, I think it was the only car that was torched, but my wife was just like, yeah, we woke up and was like, I think that's our car.
You know how that show, That's So Raven, that's so Tucson.
Yes.
Like, I mean, God.
But everywhere that, like, I think of Boston when they win, obviously the Red Sox.
And there's duck boat tours and
Yes. The ridiculousness that comes from championships.
Dude, you know what's wild? Speaking of sports riots, because I've only seen it twice. When the team loses, so Vancouver's been to the Stanley Cup Finals, I think twice.
Okay.
Twice since I've been alive. And both times they've lost in Game 7s. And both times, for whatever reasons, their city just goes up in flames, dude.
Like it's a Guns N' Roses concert and it just walks off the stage.
Yeah, it inspired me to write that. That's why I want the Utah Jazz to win a title joke, because I want to see Mormons riot.
Yes,
and just
exactly.
lose their shit.
Exactly.
Anyway, back to post 97, because it was a magical run, and Lute Olson, like Bill Cowher, finally gets his championship.
Yep.
On a team that probably wasn't his best, but goddamn, he coached them so well.
Well, that's what happens with college basketball, I feel like, is
it's the hot team.
It's the hot team.
It's always the hot team.
Yeah, not necessarily the best team, especially with these kids. They're kids at this point. They're, I mean, sometimes you see a 30-year-old and they're running the point, but you're like, hey, that guy's bald.
But that guy's got a LeBron James hairline.
Yeah, exactly. But they're kids, so they streak. They go into ups and downs. So and that's what we see the next year.
Which pissed me off so much because everybody's back. They're all better. And they roll through the Pac-10.
Yes.
I mean, they are
still a good Pac-10 too.
They are straight up, destroying people.
Yes.
And they're the number 1 overall seed. I mean, they're raring and ready to go. And for the first round, second round, Sweet 16, they won handily all 3 of those games. Mm-hmm. And then they run into Rick Majerus in Utah.
And a weird zone.
A very weird zone. And they go cold in that game.
This is where I feel like why zone is so effective is you run into a team of shooters and they go cold. And
exactly.
You're just like, you can't do anything now. And that game, I remember I watched some highlights of it, is such a...
It's sad.
It's sad. You can see it on the players' faces.
Because you know that's the end for them because now they're all juniors and seniors, or in Bibby's case, a sophomore who's ready to jump to the NBA.
Yes.
And
you're not going to stay when a bunch of other people are jumping when you're Bibby.
And that's kind of the cool thing. I mean, that's the saddest part is that they're leaving, but in the back of your mind, if you're a U of A fan, we have Lute Olson, and he's going to get good players after this and make some runs after. And you have Jason Terry coming back because he can finally start now that Bibby's gone, so he can showcase and become the eventual lottery pick and successful NBA player that he was.
Yes.
And to their credit, the next year they lose, I think, a 3-14 matchup in the first round. But then you stun us 2000, 2001. After that up and down season, you get, or 98, 99, you had that. And then 99, 2000, they lost again as a 1 seed to Wisconsin. But then 2000, 2001 is when you get Jason Gardner, Arenas, Agent Zero, Gilbert Arenas. Lauren Woods is on that team. I mean, they are straight ready to go.
Well, with Arenas, it brings up another great point is he would get these players who are not, like Steve Kerr, who are not highly scouted from high school. Gilbert Arenas
wasn't. He was almost a nobody.
Was nobody. And
I think Ruben Douglas was rated ahead of him recruiting-wise.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing was Lute sees these potential and gives guys opportunities to fulfill their potential. And that's why he's one of the best college coaches ever.
And that was probably my favorite U of A team, honestly, because they were just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And they start rolling in the tourney as a 2 seed, and they beat Michigan State in the Final Four, and they end up playing Duke. And some questionable calls in that game in favor of Mike Krzyzewski. Somebody doing some stuff to Gilbert Arenas, I remember, that didn't look too legal on the replay.
I can't tell you how angry my father was. You know how?
Oh, dude, my dad was. He calls Krzyzewski rat face.
Yeah, there's nothing like dad anger at a sporting event that's going not even a sporting event, but that the refs are having a hand in.
Yeah.
My dad anger at that level is fucking scary.
Well, and it's weird because my dad never talks watching games.
Yeah.
But whenever Duke comes on, that rat face douchebag, it's hilarious. But no, Luke Walton was a great player. He had finally started, coming up there and getting some significant minutes for him on that team. I mean, they were
being a passing power forward.
Yeah.
But bringing up Luke is the another group of players that went on to become coaches.
Yeah.
And that we see these players who are so smart and understand the game so well, Luke and Steve Kerr. They just go on, and he had a bunch of other players who didn't play NBA that went on to coach.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, he created a program the right way to create players that were NBA ready,
and not only NBA ready, but just successful in other areas of life. It didn't even have to be the NBA. The sad part about that though is that was his last Final Four.
Yes,
2001, and they had some near misses. I remember 2003, I was heartbroken when they lost to Kansas.
Yeah.
Because Kansas and Roy Williams now at North Carolina. That 2003 team was loaded because Iguodala and Hassan Adams were freshmen and they were really flashing. And then 2 years later, Salim Stoudemire's finally draining threes.
Yeah, Damon Stoudemire's cousin.
Yeah.
He had one of the, I wouldn't even say it was great, but he had one of the funnest 3-pointers to watch.
Oh, dude, and he's lefty too?
Yeah, he's lefty. It's
man.
the highest arc, and when it goes in, it almost it looks like it dropped from the ceiling.
And then kind of the as bad as that Kansas loss was in 05 when they blew that huge lead against Illinois when they had Channing Frye and oh my God.
Another great big man to come out.
Yeah,
not a center, but a power forward, I would say. But
he wasn't dominant in the NBA, but he played for like 15 years.
That's what I mean. These guys who could play on NBA teams, and he was a starter for a lot of the time, a bench player for a lot of the time. You look at Andre Iguodala, though. I think he has the most championships out of a U of A player.
Yeah, I wish he had stayed more than 2 years
Yes.
here. I mean, but you could tell like that
He was ready.
Yeah, he was ready to go after his sophomore year.
Well, there are these guys who are athletically ready and not skill-wise, which I felt like he was when he first came, like freshman, sophomore year. But then his skill kind of took over, and it was like, no, I need to
by the end of his sophomore year, you were just like, whatever.
Why would I give up a couple of $1 million to come back? Like,
He was a lottery pick.
Yeah,
I mean,
no offense to U of A, and but
apparently, because I had looked up this stat, 17 first rounders, 22 NBA championships, he coached them up. And the players who played in the league made $1.2 billion.
Yeah, I thought that statistic was crazy.
God.
Yeah.
But, so after he coaches a couple more seasons, they really don't get back into form, and Lute starts running into health issues.
Well, in 2000, I believe in 1.
Oh, his wife Bobby died in 2001, right before they went to the national championship game. Yeah.
So it's you see
that season,
yeah, you see stuff kind of start to deteriorate a couple of years down. He gets remarried, but then
divorces, and then marries again. I think.
Yeah. It's his life post Bobby is a little bit.
But even his grandkids coach too.
Yeah, his granddaughter's in the WNBA. She was like assistant coach of the year or some shit like that.
Yeah, and then one of his sons, or not his sons, but his grandsons coaches with the Rockets.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a whole kind of coaching tree for them. But he's out by, I believe, 06, 07. I think that's his last year at U of A.
It was weird as shit because just to go back as the way it went down, 10 minutes before tip-off, they announced he wasn't going to be on the bench. And people were like, whoa. And then they announced it didn't have anything to do with health because he was old at that. He was like 75.
Still old.
And then the next day, he came out and said he was getting a divorce from his wife. And then the next day, he came out and fired his assistant.
Roseborough, who'd been with him forever.
He was like the guy who was going to take
coach
over.
in waiting.
Yes, coach in waiting.
And then they brought in O'Neal.
Which was
an angry man.
Yes, which was a mistake. And people said that's when he really needed to step away from the game, and he did.
Yeah, he eventually did, and he had that stroke too at that time, and you could tell it was sad because, I mean, his overall record at U of A was 589 and 127.
Well, a couple of statistics. He has the best winning percentage outside of John Wooden in the Pac-10.
Yeah.
And that's it. Those are the two Pac-10 coaches that you would put in.
Oh, yeah, there's only two.
Yeah.
And like I had said before, if you don't know this, U of A winning the national championship in 1997, that is the last Pac-10 school to win a national. It's been over 20 years since someone's won it all, which I find absolutely insane. But
well, you see the other programs have kind of dropped off. UCLA.
It's kind of everybody's game now again.
Yeah.
And maybe U of A needs another Lute Olson.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Sean Miller's good, but there's various things.
That one year made me so mad. Not even the year that they took out the Aztecs in the Sweet 16, but 2011, Kemba Walker. Oh, you dick.
Yeah.
Like, San Diego State is loaded. You got, Franklin and Kawhi Leonard is obviously going to jump to the NBA. I wish he stayed longer.
One and doneer.
You had 2 years.
Was he did 2? Okay.
He did 2. But in that game, they called a BS flagrant foul because I was excited because Arizona was the 2 seed and San Diego State was a 3 seed. So I was thinking, if oh God, Arizona's going to beat Duke. God damn it, please San Diego State win this game so they can play each other. And it didn't end up happening because the official stepped in and ruined my dreams. And that stupid Kemba Walker in the next round against the Cats.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But that's the worst. That's where you get that dad anger coming from.
I had the red ass for that for the next 2 weeks.
It's the worst. The refs interfering in games is worse than outright losing.
Yeah, and then Connecticut goes on probation shortly thereafter. I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my family, the two schools that we always rooted for was Connecticut and U of A. And
yeah.
They went on probation, and you just didn't hear us rooting for Connecticut anymore because that was something my dad always hated, was these programs that were just dirty as shit.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not what college basketball was, you know.
Yeah, and Luke kind of managed to avoid a big part of that.
Yes.
And that's kind of what made him so special, and why they kind of had those 2 off years after he left, where they had the replacement coaches, and then they finally get Miller. But, you know, even after that, he was a pillar in this community. I mean, he stayed. I mean, there were probably multiple times where he could have left either to the NBA or a bigger and better program, particularly after that first Final Four run.
Yes, definitely. There had to have been offers on the table.
I'm sure UCLA probably tried to get him at least once. At least
without
once.
a doubt. UCLA, USC.
Because he loved John Wooden. He probably would have loved to have coached there. But he stayed here when a lot of people don't. And that's what made him special.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why people love him here, is because there were probably plenty of other opportunities for him. And he said, no, this is what I built. You know, McHale Center was rare and ready to go for him. I mean, he turned that into the place to be on campus. Not the football stadium, but the basketball arena.
Yeah.
Which probably seats a quart, not even a quarter, probably an eighth of what the football stadium seats.
Yeah. And this is why it's so hard to get tickets, is a shit ton of white hairs grab them.
Well, you know why? My parents explained this to me, actually, is so like, my dad, they lived here until 86.
Mm-hmm.
So like the year before I was born, they lived here. And when they started dating in the early 80s, nobody wanted to go see the basketball team.
Sure, they're a shitty team.
So what ended up happening was like the only people that wanted to see them were all the old people here for the winter, who come here for the winter.
Oh, yeah.
So they bought all the season tickets and they just held on to them. That's specifically why it's like a geriatric convention a lot of the times in there outside the student section.
Yeah.
Is in the early, they just never gave them up and kept them in their family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, why not? That's the thing. That's the perfect time to buy season tickets for a team, is when they're on the downswing. And I bet in 86, you know, with Lute coming in, they were just like, this
83, yeah.
Well, yeah, with him turning it around at that point, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's why you couldn't give them away, they said, back in the day. And all the old people were like, I'll go to the game.
Exactly.
But thank you, Lute Olson, man.
Yeah.
You just, 7-time Pac-12 or Pac-10 Coach of the Year. He won the FIBA World Championships in 1986.
Yep.
I mean, 5 Final Fours total, 1 with Iowa, 4 with Arizona. I mean,
20 consecutive 20-win seasons. That's a program that, is a staple.
The only year he didn't make the tournament at U of A was his first year.
Yep.
They had the longest streak going until that first year with Miller.
Yeah.
And
now North Carolina, I think, has it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has all these statistics that he's put in the exact right place for me that he should. Like, he has one less NCAA tourney win than John Wooden and one more than Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
It's just, he is the Pac-10 coach of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s.
Easily. Nobody could touch it. He's called, everybody wants to ride Krzyzewski's dick or like Boeheim, but like, no, sports exist west of the Mississippi. I'm sorry. And Lute Olson is definitely in that conversation.
A lot of that has to do with the TV rights and how they get screwed over in the Pac-10 with that. But that's another.
Well, and the ESPN just basically being a mouthpiece for the Big East.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
I mean,
you got
ACC and Dick Vitale.
I was going to say ACC. Yeah, Dick Vitale just being if
Dick
they wear
Vitale
blue
on his knees, just slurping them up.
Yeah, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky. He can't get enough of those. But it even is more of a testament to him building this program that he did it almost in the face of adversity.
Oh yeah, like this is where you gas up before you hit LA.
Not anymore.
God, I saw the interviews though, because like we said, he just recently died about a month and a half ago. Is that they were interviewing former players talking about him, and they were just so distraught.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see how much he meant to their lives. Like Ben Davis, his was particularly sad. He just broke down and cried. Like you could feel it through the screen, honestly.
Yeah, well, Steve Kerr, when he won his first championship with the Warriors, was the first name out of his mouth was Lute Olson.
It was before Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was going chronologically, but the first name out of his mouth was Lute Olson, which is amazing.
Yeah,
amazing company to be in.
Yeah, got to give it up to Lute Olson, man.
Yeah, seriously. Rest in peace, sir. Thank you for making Tucson proud of itself. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to that podcast. This is just a stock message at the end of all of our podcasts, so we hope you enjoy. You listen to whatever athlete that was. Give us a follow at the Sports Experience Podcast on Instagram. Also, myself at Quinn Comedy on Instagram. Also, DiTolla Dominic on Instagram. Just follow us all around. If you have any suggestions for any athletes you want us to do, shoot us an email at thesportsexperiencepodcast@gmail.com. And we always are recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.